everyone, let's talk about making a power stick. That came up yesterday in my reading where one of the sets had the card staff, and basically that is a power stick. I talked about a little bit, and then someone said she had a besom broom and that it wasn't all that grounding, and then I thought, well, might be a nice subject to do a video on. It's about the besom broom. I personally feel that's different. It doesn't have the same purpose. Like in witchcraft, you have different tools, right? You have your atame, you have your chalice, your wand, if you want that. And you can have a power stick, and you can have a besom and a cauldron, and these are all different, and they all have a different purpose. And a besom, a broom, is more for cleansing, swiping away negative energies. And you can also use that in your circle, if you do circle work, to get rid of negative energies in your circle. You can also use that in your home. But I don't personally feel that it's really the same thing as a power stick, because it's just a completely different tool. And now a power stick, I made mine when I was still training with a hedge witch. So I basically can say that I'm one too. Although, I started doing other things as well at some point. I made mine when I was still training with that hedge witch. I think around 2007 or something, so quite some time ago now. It doesn't have to be like a staff. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. It can also be shorter. As long as to you it represents power. Now the best thing is if you can make one yourself, because when you make something yourself, you put your own energy into it, and that is what makes it stronger than when you buy one that is already done, that's done by someone else. If you were to buy one, I know a woman who is also into not witchcraft, I don't think, but shamanism, and she makes smudge fans, the most beautiful smudge fans, with sometimes golden eagle. Sometimes she can get hold of those feathers from the US, because I'm not in the US, right? I'm in the Netherlands. I'm Dutch. And goose and swan and sometimes chicken. She always has a mixture of feathers in there, and then they define the energy of that smudge fan. Now such a person you can also ask to make one personally for you, and that's the same with power stick, I suppose. And like a reading, right? If someone makes one especially for you, then they if they are a shaman or energy worker, whatever you want to call it, and they tune into your energies, and that's still better than buying one that is not made especially for you, because that does make a lot of difference. Especially when your own energy is in it, when you make it yourself. And then, what you can do if you want to make your own power stick, you go to the woods, and with the idea in your head to find the piece of wood for your power stick. And don't expect to find it right away. That can take a bit of time, because maybe the branch that you need or the stick that you need is still on the tree. Right? It hasn't fallen off yet. So it might take a little bit of time. Or you maybe have something in your head like, I need alder, I want alder. But Spirit knows that you don't need alder, you need something entirely different. Elder, maybe, I don't know. And so then you're focusing on the wrong thing. So it is also good to just go into the woods, not fill in what type of wood it has to be and what it should look like. Just ask Spirit to, And also, if you go into the woods or a park or whatever, it's always handy, especially if you want to find something there that you can take home as a tool. Ask Spirit of Place permission. And Spirit of Place, every woods, every park, every, well, it's like a house spirit almost, it's a similar thing, has a Spirit of Place, the guardian of that place. And actually, if you want to go into the woods or into a park or whatever piece of nature, a meadow isn't any different, just a piece of nature. You should just wait before you enter it and ask that Spirit of Place. Greet that Spirit of Place, then ask if you have permission to go into the woods, to go into the meadow, to go into wherever it is you want to go to. Right? And you will feel that. You just have to open up, just wait, and you will feel it. You will feel if it is okay that you can go into these woods. I always got permission, except for once. One time I did not get permission. And then I, of course, could have just gone in. That's your own choice, right? At that moment. But I honor these things. And if the Spirit of Place doesn't want me there, basically there was something going on at that time energetically in those woods, and I would have disturbed that. Let's just leave it at that. The elementals and fairies and nature spirits, etc. They were busy with something, and that's why I wasn't allowed in. And I didn't. Then I went somewhere else. And the funny thing is, by going somewhere else, I actually found my power stick. I'd been, no, hang about, there was another time. One time I went into the woods as well, and I was sort of chased out of it, but it was really quite freaky, really freaky. There was no one else there. I was alone. It's just a very small woods. It belonged to the village that I was living in at the time. It's really a very small woods. So don't think American woods, right? Nothing like that at all. And for most Americans, I think your backyard is probably larger than that woods. But anyhow, I went there, again, with the idea in mind to find my power stick. And I'd been doing that for quite some time because I really wanted to find it. And I was walking through that little woods, and I felt I was not wanted there. I wasn't welcome. And it was as if the wind suddenly picked up and was trying to just blow me out of that woods and try to push me out. And I was never scared in that woods because that was my own ritual place, in a way, to do things and to go to and to recuperate and to rest. And I had my own oak tree there as well that I connected with and that I set up against if I needed strength, that I breathed with together while touching its trunk when I needed healing. And I knew the entire woods and the trees and the bushes, etc., and the energies. And but then I did begin to feel really uncomfortable, and the wind, it was really strong, and it felt as if that wind was only there behind me or around me or something, and that outside of that woods there was no wind at all. And so in the end I began to feel so uncomfortable that I thought, I want to get out of here. I don't like this anymore. So I left. And I decided to go to another place, to the dike, the old sea dike, and because I wasn't ready to go home yet. And I went there, and I sat down there. There is quite an old, big hawthorn tree there, and it looks really majestic. It has quite a thick trunk because it is quite an older hawthorn tree. I haven't a clue how old, but it was always really very beautiful. I always felt that there was like a portal to the fairy realm, because hawthorns are connected to fairies, but yeah, there were so many hawthorn trees here on the right on the island. I don't really feel that every tree is like a portal or whatever, you know. But that one, because it was so majestic, it has such a specific energy. Yeah, I can feel that. You know, if I can communicate with trees if I like that. Anyhow, I sat next to that tree in the grass. And all of a sudden, a few meters from me, I saw a branch in the grass. And I thought, oh, okay. It looked horrible, it looked dirty and yucky and slimy. And, and I walked over there anyway and I picked it up. And it was like, ugh. You know, dogs had been walking around with it, even though it was quite large. It reaches my shoulder and I'm 5'10", 1 meter 78. So it is quite a tall stick, right? And dogs have been walking around with it in their gobs, so you could tell on the bark it was all like, ugh, you know, it looked gross, it felt gross to pick up. But I knew right away that that was my stick. And then I also understood why I was chased out of these woods by the elementals, basically the air elementals, the wind, because I needed to find that stick, and it wasn't in the woods, it was near the dike with the other hawthorn tree. And I found it, took it home, tried to strip it of its bark, and God, that was hard work, didn't work out at all, didn't work out, it was horrible. Then I got in touch with a druid I know, or knew at the time. He told me, well, put oil on it, you know, like cooking oil, and let it soak a few days, and then you can strip it of the bark. Didn't work. Didn't work at all. Then someone else, I can't remember who, probably on a spiritual forum, told me like, well, put it in a bucket of water. And I thought, well, that's also not really going to work out because it reaches my shoulder. But we had a bathtub, so I thought, okay, it's gonna have a bath. So I put it in a bathtub and I let it soak for, I think, 4 or 5 days or something. Looked really stupid, you know. You get into the bathroom and then there's this stick with bark on it floating or whatever in the water, right? But anyway, after some 4 or 5 days, I took it out and I started to strip it, and bloody hell, it came off. It like, yeah, I've done it. Up to that point, I also didn't know what type of wood it was. I found out because when I could strip the bark of it, then I could see the wood itself. And because of the, yeah, I'm not certain, you call that texture? Because of the texture of the wood, I could work out what it was, and it's hawthorn. So it is a hawthorn stick, very likely from that majestic hawthorn tree. Yeah, so it's really quite, it's really special to me. Hawthorn is one of the hardest woods on the planet. It's harder than oak. So anyhow, I had it stripped of its bark, and then yeah, that was hard work. That in itself is already putting energy into your stick. The strength, the willpower to get that done, not giving up on it. You know, you wanted to get it done, to do that no matter what. I was going to bloody strip that thing. And that energy, that already goes into that stick. That willpower, that determination, and that already makes the stick stronger. It's just that energy is in it. And then when I got that done, I did sand it a little bit. Actually, didn't need much sanding or polishing at all, because the texture of hawthorn is so fine. It barely needed anything at all. So what I can show you, I can't show the whole lot in one go because it reaches my shoulder, it's really big. And well, then I started to think of, now what? Do I want to decorate it? I knew I wanted to do that, because by decorating it with symbols or things or whatever that means something to you, you again charge it with energy. You make it more powerful, because that's the idea. It has to be a power stick, right? And also, that doesn't have to be done in one go. Like finding your stick doesn't, for me, it also didn't happen in one go. It maybe took me 2 or 3 weeks before I found my stick. And even though I went to that woods almost daily, I think, with the idea in my mind that I wanted to find my stick, and it still took me quite some time before I found it. And Lord knows, maybe my stick was somewhere on the other side of the dike, dragged there by a dog, and another dog needed to put it back there so I could find it or something. Lord knows, I haven't a clue. But then the same thing with the decorating. It's like, if you feel like, yeah, I want this on my power stick, do it. And if you don't feel, okay, well, I don't know what to do now, what was next, then leave it, you know? It's not a rush job. It shouldn't be a rush job. It took me a few months, I think, before I had most of the decorations on it. And it can still happen that today or tomorrow I think like, oh, wow, I want this on my power stick. And then I will do that, and I will add it. And do it the way that speaks to you. And I made a few snakes, coiling snakes, a blue one and a green one, and a coiling thingy that goes all the way to the end. And I used the dot painting technique, because that's what the Aboriginals used in their paintings and artwork. And I spent half a year living with the Aborigines at Uluru, so I have a very strong connection with Uluru and the Aboriginals. And yeah, it was one of the happiest times in my life, that half year there, or 5 months, half a year, I can't really remember, but something like that. And living in their community, and yeah, it was absolutely wonderful having a Uluru in my backyard, basically. It was, yeah. And so that means something to me. So that's why I use that technique, to the dot painting technique. I also wanted, I actually thought it was a bit more, but there's a spider web, the web of life spider web. I done that in silver, because silver is the color of, yes, connected with the goddess, with femininity, with the goddess. And I wanted something silver. Silver ink, it's just silver ink. I had that. I had a shop at the time in Wicca Supply, so I had a lot of stuff. And there is you can't really tell, a triple moon in silver and a sun. And then up here, there is 2 runes, Algis and Otilla, Othala, sometimes they call them differently. Actually, I had wanted to burn them in the wood, but I couldn't get that to work out with a soldering thingy, right? So that is really stinking hot. Didn't work at all. I think it's just too hard, this type of wood. So then I decided to do it differently and just used ink, and yeah. Also, for a while on the top end, I never really, it looks a bit, you know, I don't know what you call that, scraggly or whatever. And I had thought of grinding that so it's smooth and round, but I decided against it because it looks like a mouth. If you see it like that, like this is an eye and this is a mouth. I hold it up a bit higher, then it's clearer. And I didn't want to lose that. And also around the top, at first I put colored rope around it with tiny bells and maybe some feathers, I can't really remember anymore, but some decorative stuff and bells. But when when I went out into the woods with my stick, power stick, and then walking with it, using it, then of course these bells started to chime. And even though they were just tiny, sweet little thingies, I found that disturbing. And I felt that the elementals in the woods also weren't pleased about it. And so I took them off. That's why there is no decoration on the top end of my power stick. It could be that at some point I'm going to make something again with feathers. I'm not certain. I might do that. Also, after I had basically finished it, that was before I started decorating. When I had finished getting the bark off and sanding it a little bit, I felt I needed to take it back to the woods to ask for a blessing. And what's also very important is if you find your stick, that you thank nature, the spirit of place, or the tree that it came from, or that woods or whatever. Thank it for giving you that stick. Right? It's very important to be respectful. It's often also done the done thing that you give something back. And yeah, some people use tobacco, just leave a little bit of tobacco, but it can be anything that you feel like, well, okay, maybe even an apple or half an apple or whatever, something, that you give something back. Then I did that as well, by the way. And I went back then to that woods, because I wanted a blessing for my stick. So I took my stick to the woods and I walked all through the woods, and held it up high. Really, seriously, if someone had seen me, they probably would have thought I was nuts or something. The funny thing is, whenever I wanted to do something like that, I never saw someone else. There was never anyone else there. So while actually there was always a lot of people going there to walk their dog. But whenever I did something like that, then there was just no one there. And I walked with my stick up, holding it up like that in the air, asking for a blessing, continuously asking for a blessing for my power stick from the woods as I walked through the entire woods. Okay, it wasn't a very large woods, but still, And I did that as well. So that was basically my activating thingy from my power stick. And I do take these things serious. You can laugh about that maybe, but it's energy work, and it doesn't work. It does exist. It's not nonsense. The fact that we can't see it doesn't make it bullshit. So anyhow, I hope you found that helpful. If you want to make your own power stick, if you live in a city and you haven't got any woods or anything near you, then get creative, go to a do-it-yourself store and get some wooden handle there. Maybe like a broomstick if you want a large staff, but then still find one that has a nice texture, a nice color that appeals to you, right? Just don't just grab one like, oh, okay, well, I got one. No, just really go for one that appeals to you. And maybe even in a one of these artsy-fartsy shops, maybe they have things like shorter sticks or something as well that you can use, and again try to find one that really appeals to you, the color or whatever. I mean, color does vary, even when it's the same type of wood. A couple of years ago I needed to get myself new drumsticks, right? I always have Vic, oh dear, I can't remember now. Anyhow, I bought the same brand I'd had for years and the same type of wood that they are always made of, and then I found a pair that was actually a completely different color wood. I can't remember now if they were lighter or darker. I think they were lighter, and all the other ones were the normal regular color except for that one pair. And it was the same brand, the same wood, the same thickness, right? Because drumsticks come in different thicknesses, heavy, some are heavier than others. And So there is a difference. Pine is not always the same color, and oak is also not always the exact same color. There are variances. So look for your piece, your stick, your piece of wood, or whatever that really speaks to you. If you can't go into the wood, get creative. Righty, I hope that was helpful. Also, one last thing: if you do go into the woods, then think about if you want to prune your stick from a tree. If you're gonna do so, ask permission. Always ask permission when you take something from a tree or a bush or whatever. I absolutely didn't want to do that. For me, I know many people do that, many witches do that, druids as well, and they ask permission, they give something in return, like tobacco or an apple or whatever. And I don't know, for me, it never felt right. I never felt like I have to maim a tree or a bush in order to get what I need. It will be there. It will have fallen off. And I mean, look at that stick that I've got. I think it's 165 tall. It's perfect. There's no rot or anything. It's really in perfect shape. I didn't have to prune anything. I just found it. It's just whatever you tune into, right? But if you do feel it's okay to prune, be careful so the tree it doesn't get a fungi in it or something later on. And ask permission to take that specific branch, right? So hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was helpful. Bye bye.